please welcome to the stage David Tucker, Managing Director, Public Affairs for Alaska Airlines, and a member of the Bay Area Council Board of Directors.
Ooh, boy. And that's what we call in politics making a pivot. So good afternoon. I'm David Tucker, Managing Director of Public Affairs for Alaska Airlines, and I am pleased to introduce our next conversation. Whether you voted for him or not, President Trump's second term is already reshaping the policy landscape that affects every business in this room. In just his first months back in office, we've witnessed an unprecedented pace of executive orders, regulatory reversals, and policy initiatives that are reordering everything from trade relationships to federal research funding, immigration policy, to healthcare regulations. For Bay Area business leaders, understanding the Trump administration's motivations, priorities, and decision-making process isn't about politics. It's about strategic planning. Our companies need to anticipate regulatory changes, prepare for shifting federal priorities, and navigate new realities in areas from workforce policy to international trade. Today's speaker, Kellyanne Conway, offers a unique window in this administration's thinking as Trump's 2016 campaign manager, the first woman to successfully manage a presidential campaign, and as former senior counselor. She understands the politics and policy calculus driving current decisions. Her insights can help us decode the administration's approach and anticipate what's coming next. This isn't about an endorsement. It's about intelligence. In a rapidly changing policy environment, informed business leaders make better decisions. Conway's perspective on what motivates its administration, how it prioritizes its agenda, and what we can expect in the months ahead provides valuable context for our strategic planning. Moderating this important conversation is Michael Covarrubias, Chairman and CEO of TMG Partners. Michael's distinguished leadership in Bay Area real estate and his former role as Chairman of the Bay Area Council make him exceptionally qualified to guide this discussion and the business community's interests in mind. Please join me in welcoming Kellyanne Conway and Michael Covarrubias, and for what promises to be an enlightening conversation and the forces shaping our current political and policy environment.
Hi, everybody. We're starting over again. So I want to give a little bit of context. For those of you who are familiar with the Bay Area Council over the years, I looked up our vision statement, and it is to make the Bay Area the best place to live and work, 330 plus employers in the region that belong, work in public and community leaders with community leaders to keep the Bay Area the most innovative, globally competitive, inclusive, and sustainable region in the world. To do that, we have to work with both sides of the political spectrum. When the Democrats are in charge, when the Republicans are in charge, we have to work with that group. And so in the past, we've had guests on this summit that have covered and proven that theory. A few years ago, I had a chance to interview Laura Ingraham and James Carville. Well, I refereed Laura Ingraham and James Carville. Then a couple of years later, I had a chance to chat with that shy, unopinionated, slightly left-leaning Kara Swisher. That probably was the most nervous I've been in a long time. She is a force, and it was a great conversation. So today, we're looking forward to the chat with Kellyanne Conway, as you heard, senior consultant to President Trump in the first administration. Today, she's a consultant in DC, and she's often seen on TV. She's easy to practice interviewing because she's on TV and Fox and other stations all the time. So let's start off with a little bit of your experience in what we'll call Trump 1. As we all heard, you were right at the footstep. What was it like being where it was happening, as the phrase goes from Hamilton?
Well, first, thank you again to the Bay Area Council for welcoming me. What a gorgeous room, gorgeous day, and it's a real pleasure to be among you. I come in peace to collaborate. And I plan on leaving in one piece, so it's all good. But you know, I have 4 teenagers at home, so when I have to fly to San Francisco to give a speech, I call it a spa day, so thank you for that. So Trump won. I feel like I'm an unbroken thread in the life of Trump for the last 10 years in that we remain very close. I speak with him frequently. I support his presidency. I voted for him 3 times now. And he gave me opportunities that were really elusive to women in Republican politics. Certainly, I think the Democrats are far, far better at giving women a seat at the table, at the consultant table. But what I loved about working in the White House, and my kids were 7, 8, 12, and 12 when I entered, so I told the president, he said, what ages are they? I said, crappy age, crappy age, crappy age, crappy age, for mom to go into the White House. And I really dragged my feet going in, but I decided to do it. My then husband took a job with Trump before I had, so we made a decision to move to Washington as a family. And what I loved about my work was you do feel almost immediately, it just comes over you, the need in this country. There's just so much need, and you can never get to all of it. You can never service the need. And I felt every single day we were racing against the clock. The sheer incoming, as Valerie Jarrett explained it to me when she invited me to lunch in early January of 2017, I actually ended up having her office, which was also Karl Rove and Hillary Clinton's West Wing office. Great office. Those walls can talk. But it's the sheer incoming. What I loved is I appreciated the fact that as a pollster of decades, Donald Trump seemed to be the wish fulfillment of what Americans had told people like me for decades, which is, I want somebody with a ton of experience, but who's never been in politics or government. You think, well, how's that going to work? Who can that be? And I feel that the election of Senator Obama to the presidency before that paved the way to have another political outsider. So it wasn't really until 2008 that the country truly went for somebody who did not have that much Washington experience, elective experience. President Obama had certainly been a state rep or state senator, but he had been in the Senate, I think, all of 18 or 20 months when he announced his presidential candidacy. So fast forward, people took a chance, and they sort of still had that appetite for somebody who comes to Washington owing very little to anybody, if at all. And I feel that the stars aligned for Trump in 2016, and working for him was him saying, what did I say on the campaign trail? What did I say exactly? Pull the tape. What did I promise? When did I say I would do that? Was it first 100 days? Was it after I have a phone call with a foreign leader? Is it after we, look at the books? And that was always a guidepost. His his campaign promises, if you will, are more like a governing blueprint. And I grew up in Little South Jersey. I was born in Camden, New Jersey. All the guys I grew up with to this moment don't go to college. They're steel workers. Yay for the U.S. Steel deal, something I disagreed with the president all along, and I'm glad that's all sorted itself out. It's the right deal for the workers. But they're steel workers, iron workers, pipe fitters. They told me probably 30 to 40 years ago. My family calls me Kiki. I went to college and law school. They did not. They said, Kiki, our jobs went to Mexico. I said, what does that mean, your job went to Mexico? What does that mean? And they'd explain to me why they were sitting in the union halls day after day, week after week, sometimes month after month, waiting to be called on. And so when President Trump said forgotten man, forgotten woman, forgotten child, frankly, I knew what he meant. And there are many people in this country that fit that bill. So I felt in going there, it would have made no sense for me to go to the White House at all, walked away from millions, had these 4 small school-age children, if I didn't have a true seat at the table and if I wasn't somebody there who can impact policy and outcome. We didn't always agree. He didn't always take my advice, but he always listened to it. And that I appreciate. And the reason I know that is he'd call me half an hour later or call me down an hour later, or we'd have a meeting on something totally different. I wrote about this in my book 3 years ago, that I was really up in arms about taking the repeal and replacement of Obamacare all the way to the Supreme Court in the middle of a global pandemic. And I had made a small fortune fighting against government-run healthcare for years over many presidencies. And I just said, look, women are the chief healthcare officers of their households. We control 2 out of every 3 healthcare dollars spent. Love you guys, but you wouldn't even go to the doctor unless we bugged you for the 3rd time. Come on. And we're worried about the seniors in our lives, the kids, the dogs, ourselves. And I just said in the middle of a global pandemic, that's going to be rough. And I remember we really got into it. And so he went a different way. We had a trade meeting probably 4 hours later in the Oval, and he said, did you see her in there? She's very passionate. He said, did you change your mind? And I said, no, Mr. President, I didn't change my mind, but I also didn't change your mind. And that's okay. I know you heard me because you're repeating it back to me. And I appreciate being heard. I would say for any woman to have a boss like that, who literally takes the counsel and seeks it out and pushes back on you. Where did you get those facts? Why do you think that? Who said that? Larry, tell her why she's wrong. Jared, tell her why you agree. Whatever it was, like scorpions in a bottle. So he makes decisions that way, but I really appreciate the fact that he does want to listen and learn, and this is what I tell people constantly about President Trump. If you just think he's stubborn and intransigent, look at all the things he's done just in the last 4 days. I'll just give these examples because I couldn't have said it to you if I was here last Tuesday. I'll say it to you this Tuesday. Him talking to Ursula over in the EU. Then he says, I'm going to delay the tariffs on the EU until July. That comes from a phone call. So they had a rough and tumble skirmish on some Friday afternoon with President Vladimir Zelensky. And I support Ukraine. The only time I've ever been registered as a lobbyist is I'm registered currently under FARA for a humanitarian Ukrainian foundation. And whenever you tell me Putin's on one side, I know what side I'm on. So what happened there? They had this argument, but what happened after that? The president one-on-one in St. Peter's Basilica meeting with and now saying to Putin, knock it off. He does listen, and he does, I think, expand the components with which he makes his decisions. The best example I have for you is the U.S. Steel deal. So he's been dead set against that from the very beginning, and people like me, I mean, I'm not important here. Senator McCormick certainly is. The congressman from Pennsylvania certainly are. The steel workers are. And we were telling them, like, the workers want it. Who cares what the head of the union want? Who cares what the president of U.S. Steel want? I met him. He's a nice guy. But he'll be fine either way, I promise. It's the workers who wanted it. And to actually have President Trump turn around and say, I don't want Japan to own something called U.S. Steel. Japan's not going to own U.S. Steel. But it's a major direct foreign investment, and we need that in this country. It's impossible to do in China, Korea, Japan. It's very difficult to do in Europe. And we should make it easier to do here. That's different than wanting China to flood us with their goods and their money, et cetera, take over AI, take over the military superpower status. But I appreciate the fact that he listened to the people who are directly affected, whether U.S. Steel comes and Nippon Steel comes and gives the $15 billion, and we remain a steel giant worldwide, or if China takes over, or if we just let a 125-year-old iconic company sort of just go into the dust like many other companies have, sadly. So he's also just very fun and funny, which means a lot. And I know every president runs his White House differently. And one day a woman will run her White House differently, I'm sure of it. But his is an open door to those of us who had access to him. And I appreciate that. Last story I'll tell you, I was in a meeting. I think this crystallized it for me for the rest of my life, not just in that moment. I hear a lot about Trump and women don't like him, they don't vote for him, and he's now beaten 2 female candidates with 2 female campaign managers, so I'll drop my mic later. But seriously speaking, I was in the Roosevelt Room one random Tuesday morning at 8:20 a.m. It's a SCIF, a secure compartmentalized intelligence facility. You have to have a security clearance to be in there. There were maybe 12, 14 of us around the table getting a briefing, a security briefing. And I happened to look around the table, and I saw Brooke Rollins, now the Secretary of Agriculture, Ivanka Trump, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Mercedes Schlapp, and me. And I looked around the table, and in the margins of my notes, I started to write the names of all of our children. And I came up with 19 children. So between the 5 of us, we have 19 children, at the time ages 2 through 16. And ladies and gentlemen, show me the C-suite in America where that could be possible. Show me the C-suite in America where 5 working moms with 19 children ages 2 through 16, not the corporate handbook that swears they provide it, but the C-suite where it actually exists, where all of those women could have the highest rank in the place, assistant to the president, and then whatever our other titles were, senior counsel, press secretary, senior advisor, director of communication. So I appreciate that, and I think there's a certain openness there. And I would say if you were my client, I'd tell you the same thing. There's some give there. There's some opportunity and some opening to actually be a resource, not just a rebel.
Thank you for that. Now I have to go find my yes/no questions in here. No, that was excellent. You covered about 16 of my questions.
Well, you're paying me by the word, right? You're not, don't worry.
So I was going to talk about the current administration and a little bit. We can come back to that. I think one of the more salient subjects for this group that I'd like to focus on for a bit of a time is we Californians, we San Franciscans, yes, he didn't get a lot of votes here in the city, but we do spend a lot of time trying to make the state better, trying to make the city better, and to be part of America. The current status, as you'll hear if you hung around today from Gavin, is we're now the 4th largest economy in the world. So the issue for us as the Bay Area Council is, what do you recommend to bridge what is a divide? I think it's pretty clear, between Washington and California in general, or San Francisco, or our politics. And, you know, we all fall into camps. We are one or the other. We're black or white. We're Democrat or Republican, whatever it is. And that just doesn't work in the long run. It's a bad strategy. It doesn't include the word compromise. It doesn't include the word respect. A lot of the things that have been lost, I think, in these last few elections, and having been on the inside, having heard the real words come out of the real man's mouth, what do you think we can do as the Bay Area Council, and what do you think Washington can do to help this be more united?
Well, I'm all for that. I always want San Francisco and California and America to succeed, definitely. So I would give the advice that I would give our family members, our colleagues, our places of work, places of worship, really anywhere where people are in disagreement, our neighborhoods certainly. I would give the advice that it's so easy, if not lazy, for any of us to constantly focus on the 2 or 3 things that we are just so passionate about and will always, always vehemently, viciously disagree with someone else. And if you just, it's easier to go back to those because you're trying to convert someone's point of view over to yours. And so I would just suggest humbly that instead of that argument for the 100th time, 42nd consecutive Thanksgiving table, instead of that one, how about the 8, 10, probably 12 things, Michael, on which you do agree, and do have the beginnings, the tiny little threads of some kind of solution that does involve the state or the city or the county and Washington, or does need, I would say, tripartisan at this point, not even bipartisan. Many Americans definitely consider themselves to be independents, tripartisan support. One thing I would say about President Trump is this campaign particularly, and this presidency particularly, he has said one major priority of his is to work with some of the cities that will work with him. So if they get Andrew Cuomo in New York, they'll probably have a willing person there to work on some stuff, his beloved New York. In Washington, D.C., I live in the heart of D.C. I choose to live in the city. In D.C., all 4 of my children were born in Manhattan. I choose to live in cities and not just talk about what's wrong in the cities from the suburbs. I live in the heart of Washington, D.C. My 2 youngest children are still in high school. And what Muriel Bowser has done as mayor of Washington in the first 4 or 5 months of the Trump, I'll say 6 months since he won during the transition, is remarkable. She is working hand in glove with the administration, and they're working with her. And it's right there, and I live there, you can already see the difference. And I would say, let's figure that out. Did she vote for Donald Trump? No. Did she want him to be president? Of course not. And so, but that's done. That's over. You have to figure out how to work together. Now, I do think there are people, not Governor Newsom, I do think there are people in the Democratic Party right now who still want to see Donald Trump in the big house and not the White House. And they raise a ton of money, and they get a lot of airtime on cable stations to say it. And just this morning, one Jasmine Crockett, I don't even like saying her name because then she likes to be a celebrity. She came out this morning and said as soon as the Democrats win back the House majority, they will, quote, impeach President Trump and investigate his family. So again, like if you got that, and that's one of the prominent Democrats right now, and you're trying to do the important work, the intelligent, adult, mature work of keeping this the vibrant center of innovation and AI development. I mean, I came in from the airport and every other billboard said AI. I called my friend who runs the AI network in Washington. She's having a big gala next week. It's a huge thing. One of my dear friends has the AI portfolio at the Treasury now. She moved from Florida to do that. So it's a very exciting time in Washington for the stuff that you care about. But I would do that. I would be a resource. And I would say, how do we do this together? What's working in some cities and what's not working? There have to be things here that have tried, that have failed, and there have to be things here that have tried and are succeeding. And so I think to bring to bear those best practices, whether it's infrastructure, innovation, Otherwise, it's easy for everybody to see the negative. Oh, look at the retail crime. Oh, look at the homeless. Oh, look at the cost of living. Oh, look at the housing shortages. These are all true. But the last thing I wanted to, if I may just offer, this past election was about many things. Inflation, migration, I got it. It was about many things. But it was also about two themes that don't get enough attention. In addition to affordability, I'd say it was security, strength over weakness, which is important to people. So if you have strength in the cities, whether that's in partnership with Washington or on your own, when people feel like the city is strong from the inside out, the businesses feel that they can thrive, people want to go there to recreate, to eat, to play, to live, to work, to educate themselves and their children. When they feel like when you feel like any institution is strong and sturdy, and I didn't say tough necessarily, that's okay, and not weak. So this election was about strength over weakness, but it was also about something else I'd like to submit to you. It was about fairness over unfairness. Yes, fairness over wokeness, certainly, but fairness over unfairness. That's even more important. And this was the election, ladies and gentlemen, where people really said across this country, and in a lot of blue states, you know, that's it. No more are you going to tell me who I am, what to believe, what to fight for, and how to vote based on my age, my gender, my sex, my sexual orientation, my religion, my union card membership, my socioeconomic status, whether I have kids or don't, rural, urban, suburban. This is the election where it all got jumbled. And that's a cry for help from America to say, let's all work together. That's a cry for help to saying, why do you stick us in little boxes and then do nothing for us? So you had a San Francisco in the White House for 4 years. You had her at the top of the ticket. I don't know that things improved much. Maybe they did. I'll let you be the judge of that. But you know what? What Donald Trump said in Detroit in August of 2016, I'll repeat to you, what do you have to lose? At least try it. And I think that I wanted to say the be a resource, not a rebel part very clearly. Because I think in the age of Trump, everybody wants to be a rebel. People trying to get his attention and curry his favor. I must tweet this, I must hire that person, I must say that. No, you don't. You look silly. And if you want to be a rebel because you oppose him and wish he weren't there, that's your choice. But may I submit, be a resource. And being a resource means that you come up with the metrics, you come up with the facts and figures, the best practices. Here's what this is working and we're going to replicate it. We did a little bit. If you say we've done a little bit, we've outsourced a little bit of it to the private sector and here's what's worked. And then we kept more of it in the public sector and here's what's worked. And if you can be, honest and level setting about that. And on the fairness piece, may I just submit to you, fairness is different than equity. Fairness is equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. And I think that this gusto for fairness now across this country is why many people stood up, Michael, and said, why should plumbers and pipe fitters pay for student loans of doctors and lawyers? That's not fair. And many people said, whether you agree or not, my job is to tell you what the people said. The people said very clearly, 10 years ago, right now, today, May 26th, 27th, 10 years ago today, President Trump we were about 2 weeks away from the 10th anniversary of him coming down the escalator. But he was already talking about border security and illegal immigration, to international derision and rejection and exclusion. He lost his polo shirt and tie contract at Macy's, whoop-de-doo. But, and then fast forward, in November 2024, border security was the #2 issue in all 7 swing states, including states where the Democratic senators won, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada. Republicans did not win those Senate seats. Democrats did, even though Trump won at the top of the ticket. Border security, the number 2 issue in nationwide polling and in all 7 swing states. So when you're able to grab a cultural zeitgeist and you put it as fairness, and people say, I don't think it's fair that 10 million people came here illegally. And you may say, they didn't, Kellyanne, they're not. I'm telling you what the people said. And if we're just going to pretend away, wish away, and take comfort in most of the people around us, literally and figuratively agreeing with our point of view, I'm telling you that people said 10 million is a higher number than the population of 39 states in this country. Whoa. California excluded, obviously. And people would say it's not fair, but you know what really got them is unfair? They'd open up their phones, they'd turn on at least one station, and they'd say, well, that's not fair. Now you're handing out clothing with tags on it, and debit cards, and cash, and hotel rooms, and cell phones, and my kid's seat in a New York City classroom. People said, that's not fair, you're a racist. Actually, I'm a 32-year-old African-American male who now has to compete for jobs in the city where I live and want to raise my family. You're a xenophobe. Actually, I'm a Hispanic grandmother who's got 4 grandkids in that school in the Bronx where you're taking them out and telling them to do virtual school so other kids can sit there. Fairness is incredibly important. And yes, it had to do with men and women's sports too. People just looked at that. Some looked at it as outrageous. Most Americans of good cheer and many who are registered Democrat and independent said, that's just not fair. That's not fair to the girls. Why are we doing that? So I would say, if you could think about what the public is crying for, you may say, well, it's different here. Okay, well, but if we want solutions, ladies and gentlemen, the easiest thing, laziest thing for any of us, mea culpa, to do is talk about the problems. Easiest thing. But may I just submit that we talk about the solutions. If you lead with the solutions, we've got 2 great ideas, or we have a 4-point blueprint we think could work. And you suggest that. You've got the Intergovernmental Affairs Office at the White House. You have a president who said on the campaign trail, San Francisco was the crown jewel of America. I agree. My parents started their honeymoon down the street here at the Fairmont. Their marriage didn't work, but it's still a beautiful city. That's okay. And so, but no, I think there are opportunities. And I frankly would be very happy to be a part of that if I'm welcome to be, just to give advice.
Thank you. So let me take a little twist. So I think you use the phrase people say he's nuts. People say his style of negotiating is insane. People say you can't say I'm going to end the Ukraine war on my first day in office. You can't say I'm going to take over Greenland. You can't say I'm going to take over Canada. And still have the rest of the population go, yeah, that's my guy. So I know the book, The Art of the Deal, emphasizes 2 ways to understand Trump. One is he likes distraction, so throw Greenland out there and have everybody run over there while he fixes the immigration problem at the border. And 2, he over-negotiates. He asks for 75% tariffs when he'll settle for 30. He asks for 10 days when he'll extend for 50. So in business, I get that. You know, people who negotiate for property or for terms or for things that are related to their companies, they can negotiate those things. When you're negotiating as the leader of the free world, isn't that different? And is it counterproductive to our relationships, therefore, with Europe, European Union, with Canada, Mexico, and the like? So how do we square that circle that that's his style, we get that, and it might work someday, but it's really makes you nuts if you're listening from the other side?
Well, I will tell you that
People
it's
say.
a big improvement from what we've had for 4 years, and I can't overestimate for you what it means to Trump, too, his second term, that he was preceded by 4 years of Biden-Harris. 72% of Americans told whatever media pollster on election day that our country was off on the wrong track. You can't win an election as the incumbent party if 72% of the country, that's going to be about 48% of Democrats saying we're off on the wrong track. So I think that President Trump benefits greatly and will have more space and grace from many people than he might otherwise, Michael, because people know he's fixing problems that he didn't create. And we didn't have that in 2017. Yes, a lot of people didn't want government and health care. You had millions of Americans paying billions of dollars in a penalty rather than do the individual mandate. I got it. But when I sat down, nobody said, oh my God, thank God, we have to undo everything Obama did. Let's get going, everything President Obama did. So different this time. He said during the campaign, they broke it, I'll fix it. And I think if it takes him 6 months and not just one day to broker peace in Ukraine and Russia, I'll take it. I think most Americans would take that. They know that Putin does what he's a bully, does what he can do, and Joe Biden's in the White House as vice president, annexing Crimea in 2014, and as president, invading Ukraine in 2022. He just tends to just do what he wants with sovereign nations when weakness is in the White House. So I'm going to answer your question through the example of tariffs so that it's a very meaty answer. President Trump, I think every honest Secretary of the Treasury, Michael, from Alexander Hamilton to Scott Bessent, who's doing a fabulous job, would tell you that the 2 main purposes of tariffs are, number 1, to raise revenue, and number 2, to protect vital American industries and vital American interests, and I would add to that, in the age of Trump, American security and sovereignty itself. because he very much worries that our trade policy has compromised both of those. There are two other Trumpian reasons that President Trump wants these tariffs. So the third one is, you mentioned Mexico and Canada, to compel or incentivize, your choice, transformative changes in behavior by companies, countries, collections of countries. EU, I'm looking at you. So Mexico and Canada is the best example for that one, because it really, at the beginning, had nothing to do with goods and services. It was all get your drugs and your criminals out of our country. And I had Prime Minister Trudeau at the time, his person, my neighbor 2 doors down in Washington is the Canadian ambassador. She's a lovely person, Kirsten. She was calling me about, she's like, well, the Prime Minister and the President-elect had a phone call, but it was on their private phone, so I don't know how to make this meeting happen. I said, what meeting? She said the President-elect invited the Prime Minister to go to Mar-a-Lago on Friday. That's typical. And off he went. Everybody saw it. President Claudia Sheinbaum, new to Mexico at the time, was on the phone with the President. And you know what? The President will tell you, it worked. It worked. The crossings are down, the criminality is down, the drugs are fewer. The fourth reason is that he truly wants to make good on his promise to stop the effects of globalization on working America. The one thing President Trump has done is transform the Republican Party into the party of the worker. I don't know how the Democrats allowed that to happen. It makes no sense to me as somebody who grew up in a Democratic household and Democratic family filled with these men who were in the unions. They're all Democrats. That's what you did. And so, but he has done that. If you look at just the numbers, I'm happy to share with him. You can email them out. The Obama coalition 2012 became Trump country 2024. And if you look at it, it's really non-college educated households of all races, of both genders, of all geographic backgrounds. That's the big demarcation now. It's what do you do for a living and did you go to college? That's a huge demarcation. And President Obama did very well with them in 2012, and Trump did even better with them in 2024. This huge shift over 30, 35 points. I can send it to you. So he looks at that and he says, you know what? They were responding to my promise to make sure that everybody can work in this country who wants to. We're shoving everybody into college for no good reason. And we make it a shame to be a welder at $65 an hour. Where do I sign up? And so he's doing that to reconstruct and really to stave off China as an economic superpower. And there was a report, I saw it on CNN of all places this morning, new report, that China's economic wherewithal is cratering a little bit. It is suffering. It's been suffering for years. But he wants these Americans, Michael, to invest in America, and many of them are doing what they can to do it. Now, while he has the tariffs on, they are raising money. They're not forever, but he would tell a country or a company, that's your choice, not mine. You chose to make all of your stuff over in China or India or Malaysia, all of it. That's your choice. I didn't do that. I ran the Trump company. I didn't do that. And you as a country, that's your choice too. He said, I was there. 2 of the car manufacturers, one German, one Japanese, are clients of mine. And of course, they make a lot here, but they really just assemble it. And they're lovely people. And they said, I actually drive a different car altogether, but they know that. But they often, they went and saw President Trump. He said, this one's simple. You tax our cars at 10%. We tax yours at 2.5%. Like, you don't need to be a pollster, a brilliant entrepreneur, or the President of the United States to know that's, again, not fair. It's like, how do we make it more balanced? How do we make it more fair? So he's doing this for the long term. I think you do see a lot of give in the system now. I don't want Greenland or Canada or Panama to be the 51st state, but I do listen very carefully when people in the know tell me, who are telling the president, there are a lot of military and national security strategic assets in these places that we should pay better attention to. And look, last week, the president said he was going to lift he was going to extend the Chevron permit in Venezuela. I know Shell wants to get in there too. Then he said no. Marco Rubio said it expires today, actually, May 27th. Why is this important? Because China is waiting right there. So the question is, sure, it's a Maduro question and the way he treats his people, there's no question, and who actually won the election. But it's also a question of us getting oil down to a certain price per barrel, getting U.S. technology and U.S. workers to be able to go there. Isn't it President Trump who said, why did you left Iraq and Afghanistan, you didn't take the oil? So, maybe they changed their mind on Venezuela, but again, that's another one I'm thinking, well, He listened and he learned. He did something a little bit different. But if you're trying to stave off China, you got to go back and look at that. So he's making decisions. The one thing I want to tell you about the way President Trump makes decisions, it should be a mystery to no one. Tariffs 2024 sounded like Build the Wall 2016, if you ask me. If you went back and tallied it up, I think you'd be really close numerically. So why anybody is surprised, I don't understand. But also, he says all the time they're not there forever. I like that he just said we're not going to make, whatever he said, T-shirts and sneakers here. Well, we shouldn't. He said we're going to make, this is a San Francisco kind of, Bay Area Council kind of comment. He's commented 2 days ago, we're going to make chips and computers. We're going to make big things here. We're going to make the future here. And I got to give him credit because about 14, 15 months ago, the president had been on Squawk Box when he was running in the election. I happened to talk to him that morning. I said, that was a really good one. I like you on that show. And he said, so what's new in Washington? I said, not a lot. I said, you know what's new in the culture, though, Mr. President? You know what's new in business? AI and crypto. Obviously, it's been around a long time. Obviously, it was around when we were there in the first term. But it has evolved and exploded in such a way that I feel when you win, you're really going to have to tackle it. And he said, I want you to fly down to Mar-a-Lago and tell me everything you know about AI and crypto. And I said, let me save us both a trip. I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes telling you everything I know about AI and crypto. I'm happy to report I know a heck of a lot more of it now, but more importantly, he does. And so I think as people are throwing new, you got a nearly 79-year-old man, in a couple weeks he'll be 79, willing to learn new things and understand what's happening in the culture, in the workplace, in the workforce, and things that can't be made here. Fireworks can't be made here. Tequila has to come from the blue agave plant in Jalisco, Mexico. Coffee, cocoa, bananas. So there are things we can't make here. And, think about that. But people are in there saying to him, and I say to people, don't be obsequious. It's such a dumb thing to do with President Trump. One of the dumbest things about him, there are plenty, is that he only wants people are yes men, and that bores him. If somebody, you're all successful people in here, congratulations. If somebody on your team is always just telling you what you want to hear and not what you need to know, it becomes very boring and tiring, but it's also very risky. What if they're afraid to tell you the two big things you actually need to know? So I appreciate that piece of it. And the last thing I'll say is there's a tweet, a Truth Social post for it, a 3-minute clip in a 2-hour rally you didn't watch, a comment under Winger in the Oval. I promise you, if you have a question about your list or anybody else's list, the president has weighed in on it somewhere, somehow. You should have somebody a third of my age going and researching it for you, because I promise you he has weighed in on whatever you're wondering he thinks or will do about X, Y, and Z. And he does then use that, Michael, as the starter. That's the starter kit for making the policy. Again, then people come in and say, U.S. Steel, tariffs on, you have a call with Ursula, you're talking to, he's mad at Putin now. You know what, President Trump was told Putin's a murderer, he poisons this when he does that. Putin didn't do anything like that. Putin did not annex and invade sovereign nations when Trump was in the White House. So now he's seeing for the first time, he's there saying, knock it off, let's get peace. And it's just getting worse, and it's in Kyiv, and it's accelerating, and he's seeing that. And I think it's just a very different stance now.
Yeah, thank you. I think the issue that is a challenge is a lot of times it's not the what he does, but the how he does it. So I think that's something for us to consider. Let me try to do the last question. As you heard, Sutter Health is our key sponsor, and the NIH and the funding of research for health and for science is obviously a critical thing for the country. Harvard is the new buzzword for how to get back at a university for things that have nothing to do with research for healthcare and those kinds of things. So how are we supposed to think about the efforts being made to take money away from Harvard, whether it be from the government, whether it be from their donators, whether it be asking who their foreign students are, when I think it was clear during the Israeli issues that were on campus there was something amiss. But the process of making it square seems out of balance. People say.
Harvard yes, people say, but Harvard is a message for Harvard. let me say something. I can't, respectfully, I can't just agree with the Israeli issues, but I can't put a but after it. There is rank, raw, disgusting anti-Semitism on many of our college campuses, in many of our community centers, frankly, in our halls of Congress. There are 31 Democratic members of Congress in the House who voted against a resolution. 2 of them lost in their primaries. But they voted against a resolution to condemn Hamas as a terrorist group. That's all it said. It didn't say aid for Israel. It didn't say hungry kids in Gaza. It said nothing of the kind. Go back and read it. It was October 18th, 2023, 11 short days after the October 7th massacre in Israel. And we have this on our college campus, we have in the halls of Congress. Who are these people that you pay? They can't do what every president, Republican and Democrat, every State Department under anybody's administration has done for the last however many years, is denounce them as terrorists. Really? And so this rot is real. Anti-Semitism is real. The students feel unsafe. And frankly, Harvard, I just read the report this morning. They had an internal report that basically admitted that there were still incidents of this. They need to clean that up. People cannot feel unsafe. I don't care who they are and what their background is. They just can't feel unsafe. And a lot of folks there don't feel Columbia. They feel like they can't even go to class, not just the Jewish students. It's such chaos there. So I understand about research and grants, and I'm a big supporter. I mean, if we're going to pay tax dollars for anything, I have my list of 5, 6, 7, 8 top of my list. But you also see they've got a huge endowment. They also have a very big donor class. And I think that what's happened with all of Doge and this, that, and the other is people have gone and pled their case, and many of them have had it reversed or modified. I've seen that. I know somebody made a mistake and was about to cancel a program for, I'll just say, for a very important group of people in this country, to all of us. And it was just a mistake. They called me. I said, I think this is a mistake. Is anybody watching this? It was a mistake. It got corrected. So again, rather than huffing and puffing and rolling eyes and say, oh, he's insane, I think you just say, that can't possibly be true, because do you know what the outcomes are from that money? The outcomes have been this, this, and this. I saw the reversal in the bird flu team got rehired. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission folks got rehired. But also, look, I was in the White House, so everybody was home with their families, lots of them complaining about it. I was away from my kids every day, 7 days a week during the coronavirus, COVID-19. And we were in the White House every day as a non-medical person trying to get it right, who was going to public face with people, trying to tell them the truth about what we knew. And it was very frustrating, ladies and gentlemen, very frustrating to know that we were among the people who had run NIH and CDC and FDA, and you name the acronym, for years. It's not my job to know what was going to happen, but it was theirs. It's very frustrating to know that we were all there together, and who was minding the store? Who was looking out for this? That is their job. So the question is not whether research should continue or health is important or this, that. The question is who should pay for it and at what price? I think the original Doge examples so shocked the conscience of a lot of people who don't care for Elon Musk or Donald Trump or Republicans. Transgender parade in Ireland, it's $100,000. Guess what? I can raise $100,000 for that parade for you while I'm sitting here. And so what are we doing asking American taxpayers who we know were crushed by inflation on everything? The cost of housing up 30%, single moms falling into homelessness. The Washington Post wrote a whole article. This is just not right. So the problem is not just the money, but what it's being spent on. That's really what happened with DEI in the end. In the end, people just said, why are you spending money on things that you're spending money we don't have, on things we don't need and didn't quite ask for, when they look at actual programs, not the principles, not the small d, the small e, the small I, but the programs that then we didn't have enough money for this and we didn't have enough money for that, and utilities went up, and the cost of housing and food and energy and all. So I understand. I just want to say that I don't think Harvard or Columbia are the most sympathetic cases right now when it comes to that particular. I think some of the community hospitals might have a point. I think they're the largest employers in some cities and counties. I think some of the actual outcome-based research grants where you can point to something and say, wow, we're really close to it. But we're a country that has $36 trillion in debt. And you say, yeah, but it shouldn't be from here, it shouldn't be from there, it shouldn't be from, and it just, I mean, I think we suffer from an epidemic of looking the other way. This is my own opinion of the biggest epidemic in this country. We just suffer from an epidemic of looking the other way, whether it's at people's pain and need, or it's pretending that we could just print more money and spend more money. I'm all for the policies and the principle. We can quibble about the price tag and who should actually pay for it.
That was great. Well, I think what we should take away from this is that we are always going to be a country that has two different views on every subject, probably, and that our goal is to try to bridge these gaps. Our goal as a Bay Area Council, dealing with folks who know the inside, who know what the processes are, and how to make progress and how to find solutions. So I thank you.
Governor Newsom has invited me onto his podcast. We couldn't do it this time.
There you go.
And yes, we're in a texting conversation about that. So that's one thing.
That'll be fun. Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you, and all the best to you.
Kellyanne.
Take care.
Thank you.